Hello everyone, this is Logan59XP here for another episode of the Nin-Cast here on November 12th of 2022, and today we are here to talk about the final film in Phase 4 for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that of course is Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Before we get into the movie itself, I just want to acknowledge this really quickly for everyone that's probably wondering, wait a second, the last thing you talked about was Ms. Marvel, now you're talking about Wakanda Forever. Where's everything else? Okay, let me explain. Now, I've mentioned this on streams before, but to anyone that isn't in the loop, let me explain. I haven't seen anything after Ms. Marvel outside of this, of course. So I haven't seen She-Hulk, I haven't seen I Am Groot, and I haven't seen the Werewolf by Night special. I will get around to watching those eventually, and I will do a big fat, here's everything I missed style, discussion sometime before the end of the year. I'll probably wait until the Guardians special comes out, and then I'll talk about, all of that stuff in, one big, here's my final, Marvel discussion of the year type thing. But yeah, if you're wondering why I'm skipping all that stuff, it's because I haven't watched it yet, because to be completely and totally frank, I really haven't felt like it, especially for She-Hulk with the very not stellar reputation that show has gained. But I will get around to watching it eventually, and we will talk about it, as well as the Werewolf by Night and Guardians and all other stuff eventually. But for right now, we're talking about Wakanda Forever. I just want to get that out of the way, in case anyone doesn't know. I haven't seen any of that other stuff yet. I will eventually, and when I do, I will talk about it in the future, but just to get that out of the way. Okay, so Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This is the final movie in Phase 4, and there's a lot both riding and not riding on this movie, because on the one hand, it's the final film in Phase 4, something that you think would be a big deal, but it doesn't really feel like it. Maybe this is just because of the very mixed reception that Phase 4 has had. It feels like Phase 4 started off on a generally good note with WandaVision. Obviously, not everyone's the biggest fan of it, and mainly the ending, and also the Ralph Boner thing. But generally speaking, even nowadays, people will still say it was a good show at the very least, even if it's not, the best thing ever. Then we had Falcon Winter Soldier, and that was okay. Then we had Loki, which was better, but still nothing super great. Then we had Hawkeye, and that was pretty whatever. And then as far as the movies are concerned, Black Panther, Black Widow was kind of whatever. Shang-Chi was actually pretty decent. Eternals was pretty skippable, pretty whatever. And then we got No Way Home, which of course is the one thing in Phase 4 that everyone can agree on is great. And that hasn't changed. There hasn't been a rebound of, actually, No Way Home sucks, and here's all the reasons why, at least as far as I'm aware of. I haven't really been paying attention to the Marvel community in a while, so I have no idea if actually, No Way Home sucks, and here's 15 reasons why. I don't think that's happened yet to that movie. Maybe in the future it will. But as of right now, that No Way Home, as far as I'm aware of, is still pretty much unanimously critically acclaimed. Everyone likes No Way Home still. Then we had Multiverse of Madness, which I would definitely say was a mixed reception. That's the keyword, because I liked Multiverse of Madness, despite its flaws. But I still liked that movie. But obviously, there's a bunch of issues people have with it. Some people have issues with Wanda's portrayal. A lot of people had issues with how the cameos were handled. How Doctor Strange is not really the protagonist. Even a whole bunch of other things, right? There's a whole bunch of issues people have with Multiverse of Madness, but generally speaking, people liked it. Then we had Thor: Love and Thunder, and even though when I saw it a couple months ago when it came out, I did like it. There wasn't really that much in the movie that I didn't like. I really didn't like the goats. I talked about this in the Thor discussion, but the goats I thought were pretty, the goats didn't need to be there. It's just there to regurgitate an old meme. That's all it's there for, and they're kind of annoying. But less so the goats themselves, and more so the reason why they're there. Again, I talk about this in the Thor video. I'm not going to regurgitate it here. But Thor, I think, was the moment where the Phase 4's reputation went from being very, mixed and or lukewarm, again, outside of No Way Home, to going strictly down. It's beyond obvious, at this point at least, that while there are people that liked Thor: Love and Thunder, and I thought the movie was fine, I enjoyed it enough, despite its flaws again, Although Multiverse of Madness was better than Thor: Love and Thunder, absolutely. But a lot of people did not like Thor: Love and Thunder. A lot of people hated that movie because of the comedy and various other things. And then She-Hulk came out, which again, I haven't seen yet, but that show was received about as well as Thor: Love and Thunder, aka not at all. So this is coming hot off the heels of a despised movie by a lot of people, not everyone, but by a lot of people, and a despised show, again, by a lot of people, but not everyone. So we're coming off of 2 MCU properties that did not go down well. And we had the Werewolf by Night special, which again, I haven't seen yet, but I've heard it was good. I actually heard it was good. There hasn't been any like big complaints with it as far as I'm aware of, but again, I haven't really been paying attention too closely, but I haven't heard any real issues with the Werewolf by Night special for what it's worth. So, okay, there's that. But yeah, Thor: Love and Thunder and She-Hulk, 2 properties this movie is coming off from. So it has to live up to the fact that people are already, pretty disinterested in Phase 4 as is for various reasons. And then, of course, there's the big elephant in the room that we all know is coming, and I'm not going to harp on it too much, even though the movie does harp on it. Even though, spoiler alert, the movie does harp on it a bit too much, arguably, although for the most part I thought it was not a big deal. But of course, not only is this coming off of the very tepid, lukewarm, and or bad reception of Phase 4 recently, but at the same time, it's also coming off the fact that it's a Black Panther sequel without Black Panther. Now, of course, a Black Panther is in it. Spoiler alert. I'm sure we all know who it is. But, you get what I'm trying to say, right? So that's 2 strikes going against this movie. It's the final film in a phase that people don't really like that much, with the last 2 major installments in it, again, Thor: Love and Thunder and She-Hulk, being received pretty poorly by most people. And there's no Chadwick in it. That's 2 strikes against it. And yet, despite all of that, despite not having Chadwick, and despite the reputation of Phase 4 up until this point for a lot of people, especially the last 2 things, this actually, genuinely, works. I actually liked this movie. Like, genuinely. Like, I know I said I liked Thor: Love and Thunder, but this is better than Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh, easily. Like, this is easily way better than Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, is it a masterpiece of cinema? No, the first movie isn't even that. I know that nowadays it's really popular to be like, Black Panther is overrated. It's not that good. And for the record, when I first saw Black Panther back in the day, after all the hype from the critics and everything about how it was the best thing since sliced bread, when I watched it, I was like, yeah, it was good, but like, it's not that good. So I agree. The first movie, at least when it comes to the critics' side, is overrated. I absolutely agree with that. I like the first movie well enough, but the first movie isn't anything special. It's nice. Chadwick's good in it, obviously. The music is good, and the music's good in this, by the way. Yeah, shout-outs to the composer of the Black Panther movies. They do a pretty good job with that. But the first movie isn't anything super amazing. I like it. I think it's a solid enough movie, but it's about mid-tier MCU for me, the first movie. It's not the masterpiece the critics made it out to be, but it's also not terrible either. It's a perfectly good movie. It's, I'd say about maybe mid-high at absolute best. It's not top 10, though. I can say that. It's not top 10, or at least I don't think it is. I'd have to, go through and, really think about it. But point is, this is coming from the perspective of someone that liked the first movie but didn't love it. This movie, is it better than the first one? This might sound crazy, and this might just be recency bias. I will acknowledge that. And I think recency bias absolutely helps with all these Phase 4 projects. I have not gone back and re-watched anything from Phase 4. I've only seen it the once, and I think that's going to actually genuinely help with some of these. So some of the shows in particular that were kind of whatever on initial viewing, maybe not going back to them would actually help, because if I go back to them, maybe they'll crumble and fall apart. But I don't know. That's just maybe that's just me. But anyways, so. But anyways, moving on. So this movie genuinely might be better than the first one. Not by a ton. Because again, the first movie is nothing like amazing, but like it surprisingly stands on its own. For a movie that I think a lot of people were expecting to fail because it doesn't have Chadwick in it, it actually stands on its own fairly well. Now, obviously, the movie does harp on T'Challa quite a bit, especially in the beginning. We'll get to that in a second. I know that we haven't even talked about the movie itself yet. This is just a bunch of preamble, but I really want to get the context clear for this. But this movie is definitely, at the very least, and I don't think this is going to change, even with retrospective. This movie is definitely one of the better movies of Phase 4, which I know is not saying a ton, but this is definitely better than Black Widow, than Shang-Chi, than Eternals, than Thor Love and Thunder. So it's about like third place. So No Way Home is at the top, obviously. And then I think this and Multiverse of Madness would probably, do I like Multiverse of Madness? I think right in this specific moment in time, I like Multiverse of Madness a bit more than this movie. But they're about tied for me. Because there are things in this movie I like more than Multiverse of Madness, but Multiverse of Madness has stuff that I like better than this one. So they're kind of on the same level for me. So it's like, No Way Home is up there in like A+, it's amazing, whatever. And then we have these movies that are like, about like a B, I'd say. They're about a B. And then everything else is like C to D, right? Every other movie, like even Shang-Chi, I would probably give like a C. Like, hey, I like Shang-Chi enough, but like Shang-Chi is like a C. This is definitely better than Shang-Chi. And then like Black Panther, Black Widow, and then like Eternals and Thor: Love and Thunder are like C to D as well, probably. And then the shows are obviously their whole other thing. Again, I haven't seen the newest ones, but okay. Enough with all the preamble. Let's actually talk about the darn movie, okay? So the movie literally starts in a way that I was not... Oh yeah, I should probably explain last thing before we actually talk about the movie. I did not get spoiled on anything except the fact that there wasn't a post-credit scene. That was the only thing I was spoiled on. Nothing else I was spoiled on, okay? Cool? Okay. Let's talk about it, okay? So the movie literally starts in a way that I wasn't quite expecting. So the movie literally starts from frame 1 with Shuri trying to save T'Challa from a disease. Now, of course, we all knew that T'Challa was going to be killed off because, of course, no more Chadwick. But I didn't expect them to literally kill him off in the movie. I expected the movie to start either at his funeral or right after the funeral. I didn't expect them to literally... Okay, of course they don't show his body, because of course they can't show his body, because, again, no Chadwick, unless they wanted to do some CGI monstrosity or whatever, but, they couldn't show anything. But the fact that the movie literally starts with T'Challa dying off-screen, but also not off-screen... The movie starts with T'Challa dying. It happens in like 30 seconds. It's extremely quick. Like, it literally starts frame 1 with Shuri, freaking out in her lab, being like, "Hey, we gotta save my brother. We gotta save him." And there's all this like DNA, like red stuff on the screen. And then like 30 seconds later, he's gone. And then and then smash hard cut to the funeral. I'll admit I'm not the biggest fan of that. Like, the fact that it's so incredibly fast. Like, they spend like 30 seconds on him dying off screen because, again, they can't show him. And then they hard cut to like some like place in the forest, and they got all in the they're wearing all the ritual clothing, and they got the coffin and all that stuff. But it's very like, it's kind of jarring how they just hard cut to that. Like, we have the queen coming in and being like, he's gone or whatever, and then Shuri's of course not taking that well, and then hard cut to that, and it's just that could have been handled better. That could have been handled better, and whatnot. Okay, so yeah, that's how the movie starts. T'Challa dies. Shocker. We all knew that was coming, but I wasn't expecting it to be handled in quite the way it was. And the first like chunk of the movie definitely revolves around the passing of T'Challa, which again isn't surprising. I mean, that's what everyone expected. And we get this little like, ritual thing where they're going through Wakanda with this coffin, everyone's in their outfits and they're dancing or whatever and all that stuff. whatnot. All that stuff is, it's pretty much what you'd expect, okay? And then, okay, now I'm not gonna do... Apologies if I fudge when some of the events happen. I know I just got done from seeing it, but I don't literally remember frame by frame where everything starts and stops. But after that point, I'm just going to skip ahead to the part that matters, okay? So it's fast forward from that. We get some back and forths between Shuri and her mom, the queen, and various things, whatnot. Okay, fast forward from, like, when Chadwick dies to when the queen takes Shuri out to, like, like the water, like, I'm guessing near the border, I think. And they're doing this, the ritual that you'll see at the end of the movie, actually, spoiler alert, where, like, she has these, like, white rags, and it's like some kind of spiritual thing or whatever. Then Shuri's not really for it because, of course, the thing from the first Black Panther is that she scoffs at tradition or whatever, yada, all that stuff. And then, all of a sudden, who shows up. Then, all of a sudden, a certain someone appears from the water. That, of course, is Namor. So, we'll obviously continue to talk about Namor as we progress here, but I'll give you my general quick thoughts on Namor. So, I don't know that much about Namor. Obviously, I knew about him, and I knew that he was, like, he's been around. He's one of Marvel's oldest heroes. He's been around since, like, I think the 30s. He's one of Marvel's OG heroes, and people have been wanting to see him in the MCU for eons, but he was tied up in like copyright shenanigans with like Universal or whatever, and there was tons of talks of like, oh no, we got the rights back, no we don't, yes we do, no we don't, and now here he is in phase 4, so not ideal. If he was in phase 3, I think people would have cared a lot more, but it is what it is. So he's finally here after all this time, and what do I think about him? I like him. Like I don't have much to really say about him. I think that the person. So of course, one of the big things about the MCU incarnation of. Now again, I don't know that much about Namor, but one thing I know about Namor is that Namor was not Mexican. In the MCU, he's played by a Mexican actor, and he's like, okay, he's not strictly Mexican, but he has like they live on like the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and their civilization is based around ancient Mayan kind of like stuff like that, which is neat and all. But yeah, so that's a big change that the original version didn't have. The original version of Namor was not Mexican and didn't have like and the city wasn't, and everything wasn't based around like Mexican, like ancient Mexican, like Mayan like kind of traditions and stuff. As far as I'm aware, again, I don't know that much about Namor. All I know about Namor is that none of that stuff was a part of the original comic version of Namor, to my knowledge. However, despite the fact that they changed a bunch of that stuff, I didn't really mind it. I thought it was totally fine. I think that the person that plays Namor is he did a good enough job. I didn't have any real issues with him. I thought he was fine, honestly. So I don't know. I'm sure that's going to be controversial for some people, but personally, it didn't really bother me that much. But yeah, again, don't quote me when it comes to Namor knowledge. I'm very, very, very surface level knowledge of Namor there. All I know about Namor is that he's not Mexican, but in this universe, he is, and I don't really mind that. But I don't know. Take it for what you will, I guess. Or I keep saying Mexican. It's not. No, he's not technically Mexican. He's, well, of course, I keep saying that like it really. They never say that in the movie, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, you get what I'm trying to say. Like, like his civilization, his city is all based around like Mayan style, civilization and culture and whatnot. They got So that's what I mean when I say Mexican, even though it's not Mexican as we would think today. But anyways, I'm getting way too hung up on this. Point is, Namor is fine. That's the takeaway. I don't have any issues with him. I think he's totally fine. That's the main thing you need to take away from that. So yeah, Namor shows up and whatnot for the first time. He's like, hey, someone's trying to mine vibranium in the ocean, and they're encroaching on our space. And we need you to help us get rid of them or whatever. And then, of course, the Queen's not having any of that because he just broke into Wakanda or whatever. And that's something I actually think is very interesting. The fact that there is vibranium outside of Wakanda, because up until this point, it's pretty much been established that vibranium is only a thing in Wakanda. It's not a thing anywhere else. And that's actually kind of interesting. Now, to be fair, it's mainly pockets. It's probably just the rogue meteorite. But still, the fact that there's vibranium somewhere outside of Wakanda is kind of interesting. And maybe we'll see that followed up a bit more on in future films, because I can't imagine. Because obviously, that's another thing, by the way. Now, again, don't know that much about Namor, but to my knowledge, Namor didn't have vibranium. So since there's vibranium in the ocean, obviously, like even Shuri says that at one point in the movie that Namor's got vibranium. His spear is vibranium. His clothes have vibranium. It's not to the same level as like the Wakandans, but like they very much use vibranium, and I don't know if that's the case in the comics or not. Again, very, very surface level knowledge on Namor. But that's kind of interesting that they incorporated vibranium either way into that. So yeah, we get that, and then oh man, you know what? Screw talking about it in order. If you're listening to this, you've seen the movie. You know when everything happens. Let's just talk about certain aspects of the movie to make it simpler, okay? So let's talk about another inclusion in the movie that I think a lot of people were worried about, but I think at least in this movie, we'll see what happens later on, but I think in this movie, she's fine, is Ironheart. Now, Ironheart, at least in the comics, has been a very unpopular character, and therefore when an Ironheart series was announced like years ago during like the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con Phase 4 blowout, a lot of people were not super thrilled with that. They were like, oh boy, can't wait to see this crash and burn, because obviously Ironheart, well, not technically being an Iron Man replacement, is, in the eyes of the public at least, effectively an Iron Man replacement. And of course, I don't need to tell you that no one can replace Robert Downey Jr. We all know that. I don't need to say it. I mean, I just did, but like, we all know that no one's going to replace Iron Man, no one's going to replace Robert Downey Jr., and they shouldn't even try. And for what it's worth, again, at least in this movie, I don't think they really are. Now, of course, she has a whole series coming up, and we'll see how that goes. But I think at least in this movie, she's fine. She basically serves the same role that America Chavez was in Multiverse of Madness, where she's kind of like a side character that gets screen time, but like isn't like focused on all that much outside of like tertiary things. Obviously, like in Multiverse of Madness, America Chavez was like a big deal, like, or whatever, and in this movie she's a big deal because the government is trying to find her or whatever, or not the government, oh my god, what's the name of Namor's people? Okay. Do they ever? Okay, I'm sure they do, and I've just completely, like, what's the name of, like, Namor's civilization? I genuinely don't remember. I apologize for that. I don't remember. Whatever, I'll just say the Namorian people. Apologies if I don't remember what they're actually called. I'm just going to call them the Namorian people for the sake of simplicity, okay? The Namorian people and the government want Riri, and that's why, of course, Shuri and Okoye come in and get her, and then they lose her, and all this stuff. But yeah, overall, I think she's fine in this movie. I didn't have any big issues with her. I thought she was totally fine. Now, will she be able to carry her own series? I don't know about that, but I think in this movie she's totally fine. The same way America Chavez was. I know some people were worried about America Chavez, and yeah, I thought she was totally fine in that movie. So, yeah, nothing great, but like, she was fine. Didn't have any big issues. So, yeah. And of course, at the end, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, she gets her suit or whatever, and it has all of the Iron Man sound effects and all that stuff like you'd expect. But yeah, so. I don't know, just kind of wanted to get that out of the way. So yeah, I actually thought that Riri was fine in this movie. Again, we'll see how the show goes. But I think the movie, in this movie, she's totally fine. It's not a big deal. Now, One thing that I was actually a little surprised to see was, so of course, I think around the middle point of the movie is, of course, when Namor and his people attack Wakanda, and you get to see, everything's, there's water flooding in, you got killer whales and all this other stuff, all that stuff, right? Because obviously he has control of the sea or whatever, not to be confused with another superhero that controls the sea or whatever. Actually, fun fact, Namor, you know how I said earlier that Namor is actually one of the original Marvel superheroes? He actually predates Aquaman. So for all the concern of like, oh, people are just going to view him as Marvel's Aquaman, and he is, but he's actually, but if anything, a more accurate statement would be Aquaman is DC's Namor, because Namor came out before Aquaman. But of course, Aquaman is far more known because of the Super Friends and, of course, the recent movies with Jason Momoa and all kinds of other stuff. Whereas Namor is only really being introduced to the public consciousness right now in this movie. I don't think he made appearances in any of the other Marvel shows, to my knowledge. And by Marvel shows, I don't mean like the MCU. I mean like the animated shows and stuff from years ago. Not that I've seen most of them, so I wouldn't really know anyway. But as far as I'm aware of, this is Namor's first like big public outing. So yeah, is he gonna become a household name like Aquaman? I doubt it, but hey, he's here. But anyways, so yes, yeah. In the middle of the movie, he attacks Wakanda and whatever, and we get something that I actually wasn't quite expecting, but in retrospect, really, I guess, wasn't that surprising. So, of course, he attacks Wakanda, and at this point, Riri is in Wakanda with the Queen and Shuri and everyone else, because, of course, Namor wants to kill her, because she made the device that the Americans used to mine the vibranium that was in their ocean, yada, yada, yada. Again, everyone knows if you're watching this. And then we get something that I was a little surprised by, and yet wasn't expecting. Like, I know I said that already, but anyways. So basically, at the end of this entire like middle act encounter, the Queen dies. Too soon? Too soon? Man. Okay, slightly off topic. I actually wasn't expecting that to happen quite when it did. Like, remember a few months ago, and of course the Queen, the real life, Queen passed, right? I don't think anyone was really expecting it to happen right then, but then again, she was like 96, I think. So I mean, plenty long enough. But anyways, again off track. Back to the Wakandan Queen. But yeah. So the Queen of Wakanda. I think she had. I'm sure she has a name. I just don't remember it. I'll just call her the Queen because everyone knows what I'm talking about. She dies. And I was actually a little surprised because on the one hand, I really should have seen that coming. But at the same time, it's like, well, why would they do two? We already have the death of T'Challa. Do we really need to kill off the Queen too? But for what it's worth, it's handled well. We get a lot of emotion from Shuri as she's freaking out over her being dead. So, all that stuff. So, I'd say it was handled well enough, I guess. But yeah, that was something I wasn't really expecting. But I guess, yeah, in retrospect, I get it. Because you gotta give her a motivation. But the reason why they probably killed her was, of course, the classic, motivation, right? It's funny, actually. My friend brought, because of course I went to a friend when I saw this, and he actually pointed this out to me after the fact. The whole this is kind of similar to No Way Home, where they kill off like a family relative to like push the hero to defeat the villain. That whole cliche, right? And obviously in No Way Home, Green Goblin killed Aunt May, and therefore Peter wanted to kill Green Goblin, but then he couldn't. And spoiler alert, Namor doesn't die. What a shocker! Like, they were never gonna kill. Again, we'll talk about this later, but they were never gonna kill Namor. Namor's too big to be a one-movie villain. For as much of a cliche as the Marvel one-movie villain is, they were never gonna do that to Namor. He's too big to not be in at least a couple more movies before they maybe kill him off or something. I don't know, but. Yeah, so, but I guess it makes sense, because, yeah, just like it was with No Way Home for this movie, it's like, hey, but the difference is that, again, Shuri already had the death of T'Challa, which was literally in the movie. Whereas with No Way Home, okay, obviously there's Uncle Ben, but as we all know, the MCU doesn't like to acknowledge Uncle Ben that much. Although they do mention him in No Way Home, obviously, with Toby and Andrew and whatnot. So they do bring him up a little bit in No Way Home after all these years. But the focus is really on Aunt May's death, because at least as far as the MCU Peter is concerned, you know, Aunt May is his Uncle Ben, for better or for worse, right? Like, that is his Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben, yeah, he existed, but, like, Aunt May is like that was Peter's like real like family like connection, the person that he really was attached to. So that's why when he dies at the hand of Green Goblin, it's like a big deal to him. Whereas with this, Shuri already has T'Challa's death, and now she has the Queen. Do we really need both her brother and her mom to die in the same movie? Do we really need that? I mean, it worked. It's not a big deal. It's just, I'm not sure if we really needed that. But again, I understand but at the same time, I get it, because T'Challa died. Okay, I was gonna say by Killmonger. No, we didn't. I don't know why I was thinking that. No, he died of a unspecified illness, because of course they had to make up an excuse as to why he died, because of course he died in real life, yada yada yada. But he didn't die from Namor, whereas the Queen died from Namor. So now Shuri has a reason to kill him. Again, just like with Peter and Aunt May, it's, you know, it's the classic cliche, the classic plot we've seen a billion times. I'm not complaining, by the way. I'm just saying that's what it is, right? We've all seen it before, even in the MCU. Again, No Way Home, which was only a couple of movies ago. Even though, isn't it weird that No Way Home is actually almost a year old? Kind of weird to think about. Man, around this time we would have been swirling with hype, because it's November, right? November last year we would have been all like chomping at the bit. Oh my god, No Way Home's coming out in a month. It's coming out in a month, man. I can't wait to see Toby and Andrew. Oh man, the good times. It's the one thing, and again, I'm not gonna harp on this too much again, but No Way Home really was the one thing we could all agree on. We could disagree on the other movies, we could disagree on the shows, but the one thing everyone can unanimously agree on, mostly, is that No Way Home was pretty dang good. But enough about No Way Home. It's the Black Panther video. But yeah, so the Queen dies. She gets the same kind of rituals that T'Challa did earlier, and then of course at that point Shuri is basically alone. Her dad died, obviously. Her dad died in the first movie, and then of course T'Challa and her mom dies in this movie. Although T'Challa, for all practical purposes, died in between movies, because we don't actually see him on screen, because of course they can't show him on screen. But yeah, so she's lost all of her family. Asterisk. We'll get to that later. We'll get to that later. Trust me. We're gonna talk about that. But she has lost all of her family. Asterisk. So she's on her own, and through the power of science, she finds a way to because of course in the first movie, Killmonger destroys all of the herbs, right? The herbs that give the Black Panther their powers. And Shuri finds a way to like reverse engineer T'Challa's DNA and a bunch of other stuff, and she somehow manages to make a artificial, like I forget what the name of the actual plant is, but like an artificial like the herb. Like she manages to basically recreate it from scratch again, and it works. So of course, that can only mean one thing. The one thing that literally everyone and their mother knew was going to happen. If there was one thing in this movie everyone predicted from the get-go, the second that Chadwick died, it was that obviously Shuri's going to be the Black Panther, and spoiler alert, she is. So yeah, they make the artificial herb, she takes it, she goes to the ancestral plane, and doesn't see Chadwick. See, for a second, because of course, yeah, you have to go to the ancestral plane, right, whenever you take the juice. And I was wondering, wait, are we gonna see like old archival like footage of like Chadwick before he died or something, or like whatever but then again, I don't think they shot anything. Because yeah, he died in 2020, and I think they didn't start shooting the movie until like 2021. So I don't think they had anything shot. So maybe they could have reused old stuff, kind of like how in Rise of Skywalker they reused like Force Awakens outtakes or whatever on Leia. Although a lot of people would argue that was not a good idea, but they did it. I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm just saying. that they did it. So maybe they would have done that here, but no, actually, it's not T'Challa, it's not her mom, it's not her dad, it's not any of them. It's Killmonger, played by, of course, the one and only Michael B. Jordan, reprising his role. And we get this whole back and forth of, are you going to be, like civil and like, that's not the word he used, but like, are you going to be like, are you going to be a quote unquote good king like T'Challa was, or are you going to get business done? Are you going to actually do something? And basically it's implied that she's going to obviously she's going for it. So that's pretty much what happens there. And then I know I'm glossing. Oh yeah, also we get several scenes with like what's his name? The person that Shuri calls colonizer. I forget his actual name. He calls him that in the first movie and in this one. The American agent that they have on the inside that's like helping them out or whatever. And also we get to see Valentina from Falcon and the Winter Soldier pop in for a bit, so there's that, I guess. I don't really have much to say when it comes to like stuff like that. I'm mainly focusing on the core thing of like Shuri and Namor and stuff like that, since that's of course the main part of the movie. But yeah, so we get that whole back and forth in the ancestral plane, and then Shuri comes back out of it, and then she gets her new Black Panther suit that everyone had predicted was going to happen. I think it was in one of the trailers, but I didn't watch any of the trailers for this movie, except for, I think, the very first one that didn't really show any of that, I think. And then we get basically the lead into the big third act battle that we all, of course, knew was going to be coming, because every Marvel movie has a third act battle. I legit can't think of one that doesn't have a third act battle of some kind. I think literally every movie has it, except for... No. I think literally all of them have it. Wait. Ant-Man and the Wasp doesn't. Does it? Does it have one? I don't... I'm getting off track. Yeah, we get our obligatory third act battle, and we get all of the Namorian people. Again, apologies, I know they probably have a real name, I just don't remember it, so I'm gonna call them the Namorian people for the sake of simplicity. So we get basically Namor versus Shuri, Wakanda versus the Namor civilization. And another thing that we actually get to see in this kind of final confrontation is we get to see, I believe I mentioned this earlier, apologies if I didn't, but we also get to see Riri Williams in her, in basically her finalized suit, at least for this movie. Now, of course, earlier on in the movie, you get to see her, prototype suit, kind of equivalent to what, Tony had with, the suit that he built in the cave with a box of scraps in the first movie, right? And then, of course, at the end of the movie, he gets the iconic, red and gold. In this movie, we get to see a prototype suit that looks kind of like, again, like that OG prototype suit from the first movie. Not the first Black Panther, the first Iron Man. You know what I'm trying to say. So basically, Riri gets the prototype suit, and then she gets a final suit. However, I don't think that the suit that we see in this movie is going to be the one she ends up having going forward, because it doesn't look quite correct. Now, I am not a Riri Williams expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I have seen a couple of pictures of the suits she has, and they're a lot more slimmed down compared to the one we see in this movie, which makes me think that this is kind of like a version 1. But in the actual series that we'll be getting later, we'll probably get a suit that's a bit more accurate to the comics. It's a bit more slimmed down, a bit more like what you'd expect the suit to look like. But other than that, it's pretty much what you would expect. It's got the little heart symbol because Ironheart. It's got the color scheme. It's kind of got the general aesthetic. It looks kind of bulky, I guess, is the main thing. Now, again, I'm sure that'll change in the future as she optimizes the suit more and more in her own series and in future projects. Just kind of something I felt like bringing up right there. But anyways, as far as the fight itself goes, again, it's your standard kind of third act, whatever. Everyone knows how this goes at some point. We get we get all the Wakandans, we get M'Baku, we get Okoye. Actually, no, is Okoye there? No, Okoye is there. And she has, oh yeah, I haven't mentioned this yet, but, Shuri has these, upgraded suits, that both Okoye and the other person, I forget her name, Io? I don't remember her name. Sorry. No, not that. What's her name? This is going to be relevant much later at the end. What's the name? Naki? Is that her name? Whatever. The other, point is, Okoye and the other person, they get, like, these, like, they're not Iron Man suits, like, really, like what Riri has, but they're, like, kind of, sort of like it. Like, they have the ability to fly, at least, in a similar-ish way. But, yeah, they have these souped-up suits that are, like, blue and gold or whatever, and they kind of look like the Predator a little bit, which is just kind of random, but, yeah. But yeah, so they get new suits, and they're all souped up. Everyone's fighting on the top of the ship, and then we got all of the, again, don't remember the actual name of the civilization. Don't kill me. They get all the Namorian guys coming up. They destroy because they have a sonic thing on the floor, right? To disrupt them, and they destroy that and whatever. And then Shuri traps Namor inside one of their ships, and she actually uses, like, the heating element. Like, I get, like, some kind of, like souped up, like, AC, but, no, not AC. Souped up, like, heater to, like, basically kind of demobilize them, because, of course, Namor's from the sea. Well, he's not from the sea. Start on land. They show his whole... Oh, yeah, I know I glossed over this, but Namor gets a full backstory, and I mean that. When I say he gets a full backstory, he gets a full backstory. They even show things that I'm kind of surprised they would show. Like, they literally... Okay, not literally, obviously, but they show in more detail than I was expecting. They show Namor being born underwater, and it's kind of weird. Like, they don't show anything, obviously, but it feels a little weird. And I think part of that is because they literally show the umbilical cord, like, floating in the water, and it's like, I didn't expect to see that in the Marvel movie. Then again, I didn't expect to see that one scene from the Eternals or whatever, that I don't remember when it happens, but you know the scene I'm talking about, right? It's like, I didn't expect to see that in a Marvel movie. Anyways, yeah, he gets a full backstory that I've completely glossed over. We also get to see the city in detail, which I'm also kind of glossing over. But anyways, but basically because he's okay. So one thing that is worth bringing up, and I think at the time I was like, oh, I don't think it actually is this, but Namor is a mutant. Now I forgot about this, but they bring it up in the movie. Literally, they say the word mutant. Now, of course, saying the word mutant isn't a new thing at this point. I mean, the end of Ms. Marvel was like, hey, you're a mutant or whatever, and they apparently play the do-do-do-do-do, even though I don't remember hearing that, but I heard everyone be like, they played the little do-do-do-do, but I don't know, but yeah. That whole thing still is kind of weird to me, because in the comics, she's an Inhuman, but they're making her a mutant now. But again, that's a whole other conversation for a different character, of course. But anyways, but because of how Namor works, because he's like a hybrid between a regular human and like the new undersea people. Because of course, all of his civilization, right? They're blue, which is kind of interesting, because it's like, I wonder where they got the idea to have an underwater. Okay, actually, no, not underwater. Where they got the idea of having. I think the reason why it's kind of weird is because we literally have the new Avatar movie coming out like right after this one, and that movie also centers on a blue species living underwater. Now, of course, in the first movie, I've never seen Avatar, by the way, just to be clear. But of course, the civilization in that series is not underwater. But the new movie is going to be. It's literally called Way of the Water. It's kind of weird how it's lining up. I'm sure it wasn't designed that way, of course, but it's just kind of interesting how we have two movies from technically the same company, because of course Disney owns Fox now, so they're the ones releasing Avatar technically now, under the 20th century label, of course. But yeah, so it's kind of weird that we have, within like a month of each other, two movies that focus on civilizations that are blue and that live underwater. It's kind of weird, like the synergy, the unintentional synergy of that. But yeah, but because You know what? I'm just going to skip past this part. I'm trying to say something here, and I know I'm going to get it wrong because I don't know enough about Namor to really explain this. So, long and short of it, going back to the scene I was at before I got sidetracked, Shuri basically stops him because he's above water and he's being dehydrated, and if he's too dehydrated, then he can't do anything, which they bring up later. So he gets immobilized, but then eventually they end up at this rocky desert that I believe I brought up earlier. And we get the obligatory, like, shots of, like, everyone else battling, and then we get the shot of the hero and the hero and the villain doing their little thing, and it's your pretty standard stuff, nothing really right to write home about. And then we get the scene where Namor stabs Shuri, and I think I mentioned this before, but, like, it's like, they're not gonna kill her. They're not gonna make her Black Panther in the same movie and then also kill her. They're not gonna do that. It's like when earlier on in the movie, I think I brought this up before, but just in case I haven't, I'll bring it up again. It's like how earlier in the movie, they have that shot of, like, Riri laying on the ground and Shuri laying on the ground after the water bomb explosions from the Namor people, and Okoye is like, Shuri, you know, whatever, and it's like, they're not gonna kill Riri because she has a whole series. They're not gonna kill her, and they're not gonna kill Shuri because she's gonna be the new Black Panther, at least temporarily. Again, we'll get to that conversation at the end, which we're almost at, but yeah, so it's like, they stabbed Shuri, and it's like, yeah, okay. That sucks, bro. Okay, but in all seriousness here, it's like, obviously she's not gonna die, or whatever. Then Namor is trying to go back to the water, then we get the obligatory scene that I mentioned forever ago, that was like, the No Way Home comparison, even though it's really not a No Way Home specific thing, but I already talked about that, where, you know, we get, these kind of, like, flashbacks of, like, her mom and all that stuff, and, you know, it's like, and then, like, her mom, like, in the astral plane is like, you know, is, you know, all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, it's all this stuff. Although I will admit, it went a little differently than I was expecting. I was expecting, like, some kind of, like the obligatory, like, the mentor figure or the whatever, to be like, no, don't do this, this isn't you, or something like that, and then they stop. But that's not how it works. I forget exactly what the Queen says in the astral plane, but it's not the stereotypical thing you'd expect a character in that position in that moment to say, which is a little surprising, but I mean, it's different, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of a thing I noticed. But yeah, but long and short of it, I know I'm dragging this out. I know we're at the 47-minute mark. Don't worry, we're almost done. But the point is, Shuri doesn't kill Namor, and they decide to basically have an alliance. That, of course, as we see later, Namor's like, hey, when Wakanda is attacked by the rest of the world, they'll come crawling to us. So, or something like that, you know, implying obviously future ambitions upon Wakanda or whatever, or something. So, at least for the time being, Wakanda and Namor's people are at peace, and they have an official alliance, effectively. And then of course, you know, everyone goes home and everyone's all good and everything. And then we get probably the most impactful scene of the movie. Again, I know I've glossed over probably a bunch of smaller things at this point, but we're already at the 48-minute mark, so it is what it is. If you want a 5-hour breakdown, you can go watch, like, the Real Rejects and watch one of their, like, 4 I think they have, like, a Wakanda Forever, like 4-hour live stream you can watch if you really want to, or something like that. But anyways, so let's just skip to the end of the movie, because this is where it becomes, like, notable. Okay, so we skip to the end of the movie, and what's her name? I don't remember. Goes back to Haiti because she lives in Haiti, and Shuri goes there because earlier on in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, if you want to come live with me in Haiti, you know, you're welcome to, whatever, you know, whatnot. So following up on that, and actually, again, we'll mention this in a second here, but there's actually another thing that they'll follow up on that she said to Shuri, but again, we'll get that done in a second. And then they go by the beach, and then they do the thing that they did way earlier in the movie where they burn this like cloth to like as like some kind of ritual of passing or whatever, and we get to see these, you know, and we get to see all these like, you know, flashbacks and moments from like Chadwick from like the first movie, literally shots from the first movie of like, you know, Chadwick and whatnot with Shuri, as obviously Shuri, you know, officially, you know, moves on and all that stuff. And that's pretty much it. That's how the movie ends. Now, not literally, there's one surprise, but yeah, so that's pretty much how the main movie ends, and I think it did justice to Chadwick. I know that I think it did enough justice. I think that ending, at the very least, definitely did enough justice that I can be like, yeah, that was a decent send-off. And of course, they have the little like card of like, you know, to our dearest friend Chadwick Boseman. So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of the movie. Except it isn't, because even though there is no post-credit scene, there is a mid-credit scene. So after we get, you know, this, you know, we get like the emotional song playing over, you know, all this stuff. We get the obligatory title or whatever. And then it cuts back to Shuri at the fire. And then we get, again, I don't remember her name, apologies. And she's coming down with this kid. And I think I remember in that moment being like, And of course, and this is the one moment in the theater where everyone was like, wait, what? And then, because as everyone's trying to piece it together, what the heck this kid is, and then the bomb drop. This kid is T'Challa's son. And his name, he has like another name I don't remember, but his actual name is T'Challa. And when that happened, everyone was like, ooh! Everyone in the theater was like freaking out about it. It was like the one moment in the movie, like outside of like the little tribute to Chadwick at the end, that people were like kind of like where people were like, whoa, like everyone was like, whoa, like everyone was like kind of like blown away by that. And I'll admit, I was not expecting that. In retrospect, I really should have, because earlier on in the movie, I remember at one point, again, I don't remember the name of this character, but this character is like, hey, Shuri, there's this thing I really need to tell you. And I did remember that, and I did notice how they didn't follow up on that until this point. But then, of course, this scene happens, and it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Because this character is the character that from the first movie was in a relationship with T'Challa, then they kind of fell apart because T'Challa was doing his own thing. And so it made total sense that, oh, they must have had a kid on the side at some point, but they were just never brought up. That totally makes, like, it all makes sense. It's just, I didn't really see it coming, even though maybe I should have. Not as much as the thing I mentioned way earlier about the Queen dying, but yeah, that was something that, like, no one was expecting, and I was not spoiled on. And I was kind of like, that's interesting. So, yeah. That's the end of the movie. There's no post-credit scene, so we didn't stay for that. We were actually warned about this by the movie guy. Like, we were like, oh yeah, here's our tickets or whatever, and he's like, oh, you're here to see Black Panther, okay? Well, just so you know, there's no post-credit scene, so you don't need to sit there for 8 minutes while like the black text, while you watch the thousands of like random, you know, credits that go on for 8 minutes. You don't have to sit through that because there's nothing after that point. So I knew that. So we knew that. I mean, I already knew there wasn't a post-credit scene, but the guy literally told us as we were walking in, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, I was not spoiled on the T'Challa had a son thing. So that was genuinely pretty interesting. So yeah, we're gonna have to. So obviously that's setting up for something. So obviously Shuri is the Black Panther right now, but. Come on, you don't put T'Challa's son in a post-credit scene and not follow up on it. That is clearly going to be something in the future. He is gonna be the Black Panther at some point in maybe like phase 6, phase 7. Like, it's clearly not gonna happen for a while because he's still a kid, but down the line, he will absolutely become a big deal. He will absolutely become the Black Panther. There's no way they're not gonna do that. So, while Shuri may be the Black Panther for now, in the future, Well, I don't know. Because they're totally... There's no way they're not going to follow up on that. But yeah, so that's how the movie ends, and that was actually a pretty good ending to the movie. I mean, the actual, like, ending with the Chadwick stuff is neat and all, but, like, that bombshell of he had a kid, he has a son, that's definitely something that a lot of people are going to remember. So that's definitely... So yeah, 55 minutes in here. So, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Yeah, it's good. Like, genuinely. I went into this movie with no expectations. Like, genuinely. I went into this movie being like, we'll see. I know I've said that for probably a ton of the stuff in Phase 4, but this one I feel like, in some ways, is almost even bigger because it has the downside of being in Phase 4, which, again, a lot of people don't like, outside of No Way Home, and it also has the unfortunate luxury of being after both Thor and She-Hulk. So it's kind of like, and it's also the finale to Phase 4, because of course there is no Avengers movie. We're not going to be getting one until Phase 6 with, you know, Kang and Secret Wars and stuff. So there is no big conclusion to Phase 4. This is technically the conclusion, even though it doesn't really feel like one. And... well, it's not really a conclusion of Phase 4. As a Phase 4 conclusion, all things considered, I'd say it was good. So yeah, Black Panther, is it perfect? No. Just like the first movie wasn't perfect, despite what the critics said. But, like with the first movie, is it a masterpiece? Is it perfect? No. But, I can't really think of anything in this movie I didn't like. There wasn't any moment in this movie where I could be like, oh yeah, that is a problem. Like Thor: Love and Thunder, the goats. Oh, Multiverse of Madness, the cameos. I know, you know, the cameos. Dang it, what's another example? I'm trying to think of. Falcon Winter Soldier, the ending. WandaVision, the ending. Like, there's a bunch of other things and other, like, in the other movies and shows that people can, like, I could point at and be like, yeah, that could have been better. This movie, honestly, I don't have any real issues with. It's not amazing, but it's a good movie. I genuinely believe that. So, yeah, obviously, so if you've been put off by Phase 4 and you don't want to see this movie because of it, I don't really blame you, but honestly, I think this movie is worth seeing. Even if you don't like Thor, even if you don't like She-Hulk, even if you don't like a lot of the stuff we've had in Phase 4 so far, I really don't see that much in this movie that I think people are going to be annoyed with. I think the main thing that people would have been annoyed with was, like, the whole notion of Shuri being Black Panther, when they should have just recast T'Challa. That's a whole other conversation. It's been done to death, but now I guess it doesn't really matter because T'Challa is technically... See, maybe, you know what? Maybe this is something they made up after the fact. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole sun twist was something that wasn't planned originally, but they came up with it after the fact when Chadwick died. So they had a way to keep T'Challa alive without literally using the same character. Because they said, we're not going to recast T'Challa as in the character that Chadwick played, but we'll make a new T'Challa that's his son, and we can have that be a character going forward. So that might be their loophole to getting around the whole T'Challa recasting thing. So, in a way, even though it's not technically the same, they kind of did make keeping T'Challa alive kind of sort of work, but again, we'll have to see how that pans out in the coming phases or whatever. But yeah, so long story short, honestly, this is one of the better endeavors of Phase 4. For as mixed as Phase 4 has been, and for as critically panned as some of the Phase 4 films and movies have been, again, with Thor and She-Hulk being the two most obvious examples, this one I really can't see any big issues with, honestly. I mean, obviously nothing's perfect. I'm sure people will find the cracks and there will be little things here and there people will have issues with, but generally speaking, this is honestly better than I expected. I went into this being like, it'll probably be whatever, but it's better than whatever. It's actually a pretty decent, good movie. Is it amazing? No. Is it top 10 MCU? No. Is it better than the first movie? Well, the fact that I even have to consider that is something. I thought that, even though, again, the first movie is not amazing, I expected this to be lower than the first movie by default. But the fact that I even have to think about if it's better than it is something, even if, again, the first movie isn't anything super amazing. So, okay. We've been here for an hour. Long story short, This movie, I think, is actually a good conclusion to Phase 4. Because there's nothing in this movie I really have any big issues with. Every other thing in Phase 4 has something that I can point at and be like, this is a problem, or this isn't that great, or whatever. This one doesn't really have that, at least at the moment. Again, like I've said for many of these Phase 4 properties, maybe down the line, if I come back and revisit them, I'll start to see the cracks, and I'll be like, okay, this thing isn't all that great, this could have been handled better. But at least in the moment, I think this is definitely one of the better Phase 4 endeavors, so I'll probably do a big fat list once I review. I don't call these reviews, but they're technically reviews. I don't call them reviews because I don't consider them reviews, but they basically are reviews. Kinda. But anyways, like whenever I get around to talking about She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night and all that stuff, I'll probably do a big fat ranking Phase 4, like all that stuff. But I'm imagining right now this is going to be on the higher end of that scale, which again, you could argue isn't saying much, but hey, it is what it is. So yeah, so what did you all think of Black Panther? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? Did you think it was somewhere in the middle? What did you think about, Riri or Namor or Shuri being Black Panther? What did you think about the T'Challa son twist? What do you think about anything in the movie? Good, bad, neutral, any of it? By all means, leave it down below. I'd be very interested to see what you guys have to say about it. And yeah, so that's going to be it. So that means we only got one more video left in terms of the Marvel discussions for the rest of the year. So whenever I get around to seeing She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night and the Guardians special, since that will probably be out by then, I'll just binge all that stuff, and then we'll do like one video talking about all of them, so we don't, because at this point I might as well just do one video covering the rest of that. So yeah, but this is the final movie of Phase 4, and as a final movie of Phase 4, well, it could have been better. Still a pretty decent way to end Phase 4, all things considered. So yeah, so I guess with that being said, this is Logan59XP, and I'll see you guys next time.